Welcome in everyone to Flyover Footy's live stream. Matt Baker and the enigma that is Stu Holgren with you tonight.
Yeah, one of these days I'll actually figure out this camera, but at this point,
Until you do, though, I'm going to come up with clever ways to intro you every single time.
yeah. And let's be honest, your camera works, and I just want to look at your face the whole time, Matt. So,
Oh boy, here
no,
we
it's
go.
great to be here as always, talking about City, and we'll just see what this weekend brings.
We will indeed, and we were talking right before we started streaming, and we haven't recorded the pod yet, but this has got kind of a weird dynamic to it. It feels like it's just an odd weekend where nobody's healthy yet. You know, we had the excitement of folks returning to training for St. Louis, but like nobody's healthy. We're still running roughshod through our depth, and Seattle's the same way. We're going to talk about their injuries, and we've got the Open Cup on the other side of this. So this weekend it doesn't have the luster of a match like away 9:30 p.m. on a Saturday. It just am I alone in that, Stu, or is it?
No, I think the time of kickoff doesn't help. We've been fortunate with some of our other West Coast kickoffs being on Sunday afternoons or earlier on Saturday. So having a 9:30 kickoff and with Blues still in the playoffs, I think this one's going a little bit under the radar as far as attention.
Yeah, that's a real fair point. It's Blues fever right now. Hopefully it lasts. Hopefully we can keep the playoffs going. When's the next Blues game? Is it Saturday? No, it's tomorrow. Tomorrow in St. Louis.
Yeah, Game 6. Unfortunately, Game 5 was not quite as good. But Mark Schlieffel, or Schlieffel, I am so bad with pronouncing any sort of names, but he is.
I'm not even going to attempt.
He is out, so he will not travel to St. Louis.
Yeah, Jim Montgomery had some interesting comments on that one.
Oh yeah, and Winnipeg's coach Scott Arnold also did not have great praise for Monty in return. But this has been flyover hockey talk.
We cross over when we can, and hopefully we have more time to do it. But yeah, we will focus on the Sounders. So, and there's plenty to talk about. So we're going to go about 45 tonight. We're not going to do a wind down with the early start. And obviously Phil and Santi are not here. If you are, well, I'll probably mention this at the end of the pod, but also Fallout's going to be different this week. We're not going to do an early morning Fallout. We're going to do more of a mid-afternoon. I don't think I hope that we win, obviously, and I hope that everybody's excited to get up and hear about City immediately after. But the game going from 9:30 to 11:30, the press conference afterwards, I'm not gonna kill myself for this one, and we're gonna do a Fallout with Phil and me on Sunday around, I think 2:30 p.m. is what we're looking at right now. So if you want to mark that, we'll obviously tout it before we go live. That'll be fun. But for now, Stu, you ready to do this preview of the Seattle Sounders?
Absolutely. Let's go.
All right. Welcome in everyone to Flyover Footy on the big 550 KTRS. My name is Matt Baker, joined this week by my friend in soccer, Stuart Holgren, to preview St. Louis City against the Seattle Sounders. It's match week 11. St. Louis is teetering on the edge of trying to break through, and we're looking to do it against a Seattle team that's just about as banged up as we are at this point. Stu, how you doing as we look to preview this match?
I'm doing great tonight. It is a beautiful day in St. Louis. I think a record rainfall month of April is over, and we got more rain in May. So let's hope April showers bring May points. That doesn't work, but
flowers for the players as they get us some points. So we'll make it work. But let's dive right into it. Let's look at the Seattle Sounders against St. Louis City, and these teams have a more extended history now, borderline as many games as we've played SKC at this point. We have 5 games in the books against the Seattle Sounders. We have 1 win, 4 losses, and no draws against them, with the only win coming just a month and a half ago, March 15th, 1-0 win. We all remember the Edu Leuven free kick goal. In that game, if you look back on it, City did a magnificent job defensively limiting the quality chances that Seattle had. Seattle had 65% possession, so they had the ball a lot. They will probably have the ball a lot this weekend, as we'll look at. In this last matchup, which I think is the best opportunity to see how these two teams are going to match up, because it was obviously just a month and a half ago, they had 15 shots and only one shot on target, a 0.78 XG, while St. Louis pulled off 14 shots and 5 on target, where Seattle's only shot on target came off a corner kick. So if you're looking for a quintessential St. Louis City defensive performance that you can be proud of despite having such low possession and giving the ball to the Sounders, that was to the opposing team, it was probably the Sounders. And so there's a lot to like coming into this game. Anything memorable from that last one, Stu, outside of the Eddie Leuven free kick to you?
Well, my wife's from Seattle, so anytime that we beat Seattle, that's fantastic. No, I mean, the most memorable thing was obviously the Leuven free kick. And that was just a beauty right in front of, I believe it was the north end, if I recall correctly. So that got a lot of cheers, and, winning is always a good thing. And unfortunately, it's been a while since our last one.
Yeah, so let's look at what Seattle offers coming into this game. Seattle isn't in the greatest of form. They're ninth in the West with a 3-3-4 record, 13 goals for, 12 goals against, and a +1 goal differential. They have a 1-3-2 away record. That's 1 win, 3 losses, 2 draws. But they are on a 3-match unbeaten streak. Their last 3 matches were a 1-1 draw last week at Colorado, a 3-0 win against Nashville the week before, which is notable because Nashville turned around after that loss and dumped 7 goals on the Chicago Fire. So that was an interesting performance against Nashville that then bounced back. And then before that, they had a 1-0 win at Dallas. In those games, 2 of their 3 wins so far this season, they've scored at least 3 goals. So if they're going to win, they're going to score buckets of goals more than likely. They have 3 clean sheets out of 10 this year, so fairly defensively sound in overall this season. And they've scored first in their last 3 games. They have 5 first half goals in 2 games, 0 second half goals. So one of their games was obviously they didn't score before that, but they in these 3 games, 5 goals, 5 first half goals. This is notable to me if you're trying to figure out where Seattle usually strikes. They usually strike early, and in the past 3 games, they strike often. So it's notable that if we could withstand this early pressure and what Seattle's going to no doubt try to do in front of their home crowd, we seem like we might stand a chance, at least historically speaking. Player availability. This is where the storyline is for Seattle. Jordan Morris, Jesus Ferreira, Paul Arriola, and Jackson Reagan are all probably going to be out. Jordan Morris is now out for sure in this game. He was injured last week against Colorado. Per Brian Schmetzer, he will be out for 6 weeks. Schmetzer I think during the week this week at training, Brian Schmetzer, their head coach, was asked if they could have done anything differently or could have done anything to prevent this. And he said they eased him back as he was recovering from an injury before this. Obviously, Jordan Morris missed the first game, Seattle St. Louis, with a separate injury at this point. He felt discomfort ahead of the Dallas game. Morris sat, which was 3 weeks ago. He only played 30 minutes in his first game back, only 45 in the second. So he's been getting eased back these past few weeks. Brian Schmetzer said there were no warning signs, which makes this even more frustrating. I mentioned this because I want to put it into perspective a little bit that it's not just St. Louis that struggles with the re-injury types of issues or re-aggravating, developing a new injury when you come back. Jordan Morris has a massive history of injuries, but has been fairly healthy in the recent past. This year is just not one of them. And he keeps falling victim to these kinds of injuries. And obviously he's going to miss the next 6 weeks. So big loss there for Seattle. Jesus Ferreira is the other noteworthy thing this week, an adductor strain. Adductor? I think it's adductor strain. Questionable for Saturday now, but Brian Schmetzer said he may err on the side of caution for this one. Obviously, with what I just said about Jordan Morris, there's an injury concern at the forefront of Brian Schmetzer, not wanting to aggravate things, not wanting to lose Jesus Ferreira for an extended period of time. So a home match against, let's be honest, one of the more underperforming teams in MLS, being St. Louis. It looks like we could see a Seattle Sounders team that doesn't have Jordan Morris or Jesus Ferreira in their attack. And they've already been without Paul Arriola, who underwent surgery on his knee to correct an ACL tear a month ago. Jackson Reagan, who was injured 2 weeks ago with his hamstring and is going to be out an additional 2 to 4 weeks from now. This team is pretty banged up, and it's missing key pieces up top. They're missing key pieces in defense out wide. They've got good depth that we're going to talk about in a minute, but this isn't the only storyline. You know, Seattle does have some things that they're excited about going into this, like Stephen Fry, their goalkeeper, will be playing in his 400th game across all competitions for the Sounders. This is something that they're going to celebrate, and you're probably going to hear about it on the broadcast as well if you listen to the Apple TV local feed, or the Apple TV feed rather. He should also pass Stephen Fry, Kevin Hartman on the all-time list for minutes played, putting him 5th in MLS history. So all-time minutes played for Seattle, that is 5th in MLS history. A lot of history being made for Stephen Fry. But other than that, it's the beginning of May. And so all teams are now looking to potential schedule congestion. Seattle doesn't really have to worry about that, though. So while they're missing key pieces, St. Louis has the Open Cup on the horizon. Seattle does not. They have less congestion than St. Louis just because they're not in the U.S. Open Cup. They'll be appearing in, I believe, Leagues Cup, but definitely the FIFA Club World Cup in June. So we get our second match out of the way against Seattle. The timing for their injuries is what it is, but they don't have the schedule congestion. Stu, can you quantify the loss of Jordan Morris and Jesus Ferreira here? Is that the storyline to follow for Seattle going into this game?
Yeah, I mean, Jordan Morris is one of those heart and soul guys who's been with the club for years after coming out of Stanford for college. And like you said, he's got a very spotted injury history that goes way back. And he seems to, I mean, it's 3 goals in 5 games this year. And he really does well for them. And it seems like whenever he's hitting his stride, he gets hurt. And hopefully for his sake, it's only 6 weeks. Obviously, it's our benefit, but you never want to see those guys out. Jesus Ferreira, he's getting assists, but he's not been scoring. He hasn't scored yet for Seattle, I believe. And he was kind of their blockbuster, if you will, player addition last offseason. They traded for him from FC Dallas. They traded Leo Chu, I believe, and $1 million of GAM, or was that cash exchange?
I think it was GAM. I think that one was the GAM one.
Okay. Yeah. So he came in with high expectations, and if he wasn't injured, he probably would have been starting this game on the bench. So it might be a little bit of a head game from Schmetzer just to give him a week off, as we say. And when getting back to kind of that schedule congestion, Seattle will have their own version of schedule congestion coming up, like you said, with the Club World Cup, and we're getting some more of ours right now. They also have a pretty big May. I believe they have 6 matches in May. So we might be hitting them at a bad time getting to the beginning of that stretch where they're not quite as exhausted, but we'll see how that goes. And De La Vega, I believe, just got back from an injury, and Kim as well. So they've been up and down. It felt like they're about to get fully healthy, and now they're got 2 more injuries that they got to watch.
Yeah, De La Vega coming on board. He was either out or wasn't in form the last time we played. I think he might have missed the game, but he's definitely a piece to watch and fairly new to MLS, and he hasn't seen a lot of sustained success with the Sounders, but he's their young designated player. I think they spent the franchise record in transfer fee for Pedro De La Vega, so he's going to be a player to absolutely watch. Jesus Ferreira, though, just one quick aside, is that he's one of those players who's, I would say, underperforming what he's expected to do. His market value is in the upper 5 million range, and he was brought on to score goals, but yeah, he hasn't scored a single one yet, even though he's contributed to goals. So when you talk about finishers, there's one name that we're probably going to talk about here pretty soon, and that's Danny Musovski. And we'll have more on him in just a minute, but let's dive into St. Louis City coming into this match, because there's a lot to look at when it comes to who's actually going to be able to dress for this St. Louis City team. We come into this game tied 11th in the West at a 2-4-4 record, 7 goals scored, 8 goals allowed, -1 goal differential. We are riding a 2-game unbeaten streak. So if you're a fan of streaks, if you're a fan of the glass half full, there you go. 2-2 draw away to LAFC on Sunday Night Soccer, 0-0 draw at home to Vancouver, and then the 2-1 loss at home to the Columbus Crew before that. The last 3 opponents, those 3 are very tough opponents. The first place team in the East, the first place team in the West, and a perennially difficult LAFC at home. They haven't won since the last time they played Seattle. So, Stu, you were joking earlier about you always love the Seattle games, and the last time we beat them, or last time we played them, was the last time we won a game a month and a half ago. So that's noteworthy right there to see if we can pick up a second win, which would be the second ever win against the Seattle Sounders. And only Montreal and the LA Galaxy are on a longer winless streak. So if you're looking to see what kind of rarefied air we are in right now, having not won a game in a while, neither of those teams have won a match in 2025. So we are on the longest winless streak of any team that has actually won a game in 2025. We really hope to end that at Seattle. 5 of our 10 matches so far have clean sheets, but 6 have been scoreless. So it's hot or cold no matter which way you slice it. Any given Saturday is the name of the game for this St. Louis City team. Three of our total 7 goals, though, have come in the last 3 games. So the trend is getting better. We are doing better in comparison, believe it or not, to finishing. And I think that's what you have to ride on. It's the Cedric Toyshirt goal. It's the ability to create you in the run of play like that, which we were able to limit Seattle in last time. But health and availability for St. Louis is still going to be a massive problem. And I've been on the hype train throughout the week of let's look at the glass half full. Let's look at who's returning to training. It's exciting to see all of these guys I'm about to list actually be returning to training. Unfortunately, none of them are really going to be available for the game. So let's run through them. We're recording this on Thursday night. So Roman Berkey's status is going to be interesting to monitor, though not for this game, in the coming days. Berkey has been training using his hands a little bit on Wednesday and Thursday of this week, but he has a follow-up scan. He called it his final scan on Friday on the fractured hand, hoping to return to full training immediately after that or beginning of next week. But Berkey is somebody to watch for. News coming out of that this weekend and into next to see if he's able to return to full training. What that means, though, is because he hasn't had that full scan, because he hasn't had really a full week of training and shot stopping, according to Olaf on his press conference on Thursday, Berkey's going to be out for this game. We can expect that. Another bright spot is Edu Leuven did return to training this week in full. We saw him on both days. I'm not making a big deal out of it purposefully. He shaved his head, so you're going to notice that when you see him in pictures in the coming days. But he returned to training, full training with the team. No limitations outside of just regaining his fitness. That's kind of where Edu's at. That just means he's going to be out for this game as well because he hasn't trained, hasn't put in the minutes. His stamina is not there yet. So while he is back in full training, he will not be available this weekend. Kind of the same goes for Jay Reed and Rasmus Alm too. Jay Reed with his foot issue, Rasmus Alm with his hip. Both were in full training this week on Wednesday and Thursday that we saw. They might carry the questionable tag this weekend, but Olaf basically said neither is going to be available. He referred to Rasmus Alm as having more of a personalized training plan to return to play. Coming off of his hip injury. And Jay Reed, obviously these injuries are vastly different with a hip versus a broken foot. So you can kind of tell one's being a little more cautious than the other as far as you let the bone heal and then you get back out there. Henry Kessler with his grade 2 hamstring, Chris Durkin with his MCL, both going to be out. They returned to being visible on the training field this week, at least doing solo stuff. Kessler was running, Durkin was playing with a ball and running solo. Thomas Totland is probably the most disappointing update of the week. With his hamstring issue that he was on the matchday roster last week, he did re-aggravate that injury somehow. He sat down in the game in the second half when all the other players were warming up. So it's presumed that it was during warmups in the second half, potentially, that he re-injured this or re-aggravated it. He did not train that we saw on Wednesday, and he was training solo on Thursday, meaning just getting some running in and stretching it out. We can expect that Thomas Totland to be out as well. Alfredo Morales is suspended for this game after the red card that he received against LAFC last week. So we won't have him available. And the final update is kind of an interesting one. Jake Girdwood-Reich. I asked about him specifically to Olaf Melberg on Thursday at the press conference because of the depth issues we now have at central midfield. We don't have Leuven. We don't have Durkin. Now we don't have Morales. Who's going to play the pivot? Who's going to play the 6 or at least one half of the dual 6 that we might be running? And it won't be JGR. JGR is apparently a candidate to play for City 2 this weekend. As Olaf indicated, he may play for City 2, but wasn't ready for first team minutes yet after an illness earlier this season, in preseason, into the season, and then just not having any minutes yet. So obviously not ready to start. And this one's a head scratcher a little bit. I think feelings are very concerning on JGR getting minutes, a little anxiety building up after he came in on the U22 contract last season. But we don't know what kind of illness is. That's the thing about this. It could be pneumonia, it could be the flu, it could be a cold. Whatever it was clearly knocked him out for a little bit, and his stamina probably took a little time to recover. Pure speculation. I have absolutely no idea what his actual illness was. But when you start to think of how that could impact a player like this, the type of physical fitness you need to be in to play soccer isn't a shock to anybody. So just imagine recovering from some kind of illness like this and being asked to go how you need to as a professional footballer. That's what JGR is doing right now, getting his stamina back. And so if we see him start for City 2 especially, you never know. It could be a situation like Timo Baumgartel where you get him back in there and then a week or two later, suddenly he's able to go 45, 60, 90 minutes. That's optimistic for JGR, but he's not going to play for this weekend. So in wrapping up, we have Roman Berkey, Edu Leuven, Jay Reed, Rasmus Alm, Henry Kessler, Chris Durkin, Thomas Totland, Alfredo Morales, and JGR all not going to play this weekend. Stu, what do we say about this? We hope that this is kind of the turning point where all this group of players, this is the worst we see, but where is the biggest loss here and the biggest vulnerability for City with all these players out?
Well, it's crazy to think about before the season when you don't identify Roman Berkey as the biggest loss with the way that Ben Lund's been playing. Absolutely fantastic. Want Berkey to take his time, make sure he's fully healed and not rush back. A guy that I've been looking forward to seeing all season, and I'm sure who's chomping at the bit to play in Olaf's system, is Jaden Reed. So that'll be a really interesting one. I mean, I think Thomas Totland is the biggest loss for me at the moment on that IR list. Just seeing what he can bring, and also if he's defending against a guy like Rothrock, and I think we'll miss that on Saturday. And I know we'll get into it later, but looking at this list just makes me think, what is our bench going to look like?
How many short-term call-ups are we going to have?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this one's going to be an interesting one to follow on Saturday morning into the early afternoon to see who might receive a short-term call-up, because it's not going to be as straightforward as Mekhi Joyner, who was in training again, and I kind of expect him to get another short-term call-up. He's used 3 of his 6 as an off-roster homegrown, continues to train with the team, providing that attacking depth, but also kind of that wingback depth. Olaf has used Joyner a little bit in that left wingback spot. So when you're talking about versatility and what to do in the right wingback, you could see an option of Joyner coming into the game, playing a left wing back role, and then sliding Wallum over, because you see Wallum slide all over the field. And that could be your second option outside of, not to give away our starting 11s, but presumed Kyle Hebert at right wing back, right?
Yeah, I mean, can see that. And maybe, well, I'm sure he's a lock for the bench for this match as well, but Zielinski will be out there, and maybe he'll warm up in the corner with the other substitutions before they come on.
I mean, that's kind of all you could say about Joey Zielinski, right? Because there seems to be no urgency, no desire to really play him at this point, which I know is frustrating for the fan base. And I've seen a lot of the comments of people wanting to see Joey Zielinski. And I don't know, you might have a different opinion. I see the cries for Joey Zielinski to play. And to me, it's just, we see what we have out there. We're not satisfied with it. We're not satisfied with a Kyle Hebert type player at right wing back. And we just want to see more. We want to see different. And we want the unknown quality rather of Joey Zielinski. Do you make anything else other than that?
Well, I mean, it's the old saying of the most popular player on the football team is the backup quarterback. And we don't know what Joey Zielinski brings. The coaching staff does. So at this point, we trust the coaching staff. And I'm not throwing Joey under the bus by any means, but you got to trust that Olaf has seen the training and he trusts Kyle there over Zielinski.
Yeah, that's what I keep coming back to as well on Kyle Hebert. And on the other side, when it comes back to Mekhi Joyner, Abo in the chat, can they fully convert Joyner to use him throughout the season, because he's now used half of his short-term loans for MLS play? And the answer is no. He's an off-roster homegrown for the year. So that's a designation that they tag at the beginning of the season, and I've never seen anybody come off of that during the season. But this is for MLS play. So he gets 3 more appearances in MLS games. He can be rostered in, let's say he's rostered this weekend and doesn't appear, doesn't count per the rules for an appearance, doesn't count as one of those 6. So he can be rostered, not appear, and still like retain that appearance. So he gets 3 more appearances in games for MLS play, but he has an unlimited amount of US Open Cup opportunities. Non-league games is how they word it in the roster rules. So we'll see Joyner on Tuesday, no doubt about that. And that might play into how much they want to use him this weekend. So that's something to think about too, is some of these guys, maybe like JGR, if you want to get him opportunity on, because I think Olaf alluded to Tuesday with the Open Cup, but if you want to get him time, get him fitness, maybe play him for 45, 60 on Saturday, and then maybe he can make a relief appearance at the very least on Tuesday with the Open Cup. Guys like Zielinski, guys like Michael Wenzel, maybe Miguel Perez, Caden Glover, Mekhi Joyner, those kinds of players as a young core you'll probably see on Tuesday. And then you can have some of these guys who you might see subbing out in the earlier minutes of this game make sub appearances on Tuesday as well. That's a sneaky storyline to follow. So before we get into the scouting report on Seattle, just remember that with like this fixture congestion you mentioned, Stu, the Open Cup on Tuesday, this starts kind of the thought ahead to that as well. So if you see a Simon Betcher not appear until maybe 70 minutes of this game or 65, Betcher could be a candidate to start on Tuesday. You start to think about players leaving early, players making sub appearances, and how that plays into Tuesday's availability. It's just kind of like a sneaky storyline to follow. But if you're good, Stu, let's dive into the Seattle scouting report. Sound all right?
Sounds great.
All right. Tail of the tape, as we call it on Flyover Footy. Seattle is a pretty strong team in a few key areas. They do create a lot of set piece opportunities. They are good at forcing turnovers. They are good at individually high quality chances. So guys like Jordan Morris, Jesus Ferreira, Albert Rusnak, Pedro de la Vega, they have individual players in their attack, in their midfield, and down their wings that can all have really good quality on the ball. There's a lot of pieces to watch out for. The 1v1s in this game is good. The Open Cup's Wednesday. I'm so sorry. I'm going to back up. Open Cup is Wednesday. I said Tuesday. It's Wednesday. Thanks, Miles Sommer, for that in the chat. So Seattle, they are really strong individually. 1v1s in this game are going to be incredibly important to watch for all over the field. Wings, attack. Our backline is going to be under a pretty good amount of duress. Not just because Seattle likes to possess the ball a lot, but they use these individual 1v1 opportunities to create space. They're not great at finishing those chances. They're not great at defending set pieces on the other side. So while they're good at possessing the ball, they're good at creating volume opportunities. They're not good at finishing so far. They're not good at defending set pieces, and they're not good at allowing opponents to have dangerous opportunities. So similar to LAFC, where you can create some of those dangerous set piece opportunities, Seattle is vulnerable in similar ways to that. Seattle loves to play through balls. When they're progressing the ball up, there's a lot of really high volume stats that go into Seattle's favor, not just the 4th highest possession in all of MLS, not just a lot of their high passing numbers, but they have the 5th most completed passes in all of MLS. LAFC is 3rd for reference to what we saw last week. They are 5th, 6th, and 5th in short, medium, and long passes as well. So they spread it out. This isn't a team like LAFC that doesn't pass the ball long at times, and they do all of their passing really short and medium. This Seattle team is, they do all of it, and they do it well. They connect their passes very well. 5th most completed and 5th, 6th, and 5th in pretty much every shot category as far as volume goes, and completed volume as well. They have the 4th most key passes, those passes that lead into a shot. The 4th most passes into the penalty area, but the 10th most crosses into the penalty area. So if you look at how Seattle's going to maneuver the ball, where the danger is going to come from, you look for the through balls. You look for playing the ball through the midfield into where our center backs are going to be, into where our defensive midfielder is going to be. And you look at trying to lead the players in these line breaking runs. That's where Seattle is dangerous. They are the 6th most in progressive passes, 2nd most through balls in the league, and 2nd most corner kicks taken. So while they make these through ball passes, opponents tend to be clearing them out. So if they're not successful in landing the through balls, they are successful at generating chances in the final third with corner kicks instead of that. They have the 3rd most shot creating actions in all of MLS. St. Louis is 9th from last. So the 65% possession that we saw in this last game translates to more shots. It translates to more passes that lead to shots. It doesn't just lead to hanging around with the ball in the midfield or hanging around with the ball in the final third. It actually produces things. What St. Louis's key is going to be is limiting the quality of those, just like they did in the first game. The fact that Seattle had one shot on target from a corner kick and their overall XG was like 0.78, that tells you what St. Louis needs to replicate in this game in keeping these spaces tight, in keeping their lines tight and their spaces between their players in the same line tight. So I'm saying not spreading out guys like Timo Baumgartl, Giannis Horn, Joakim Nilsson, or Josh Yarrow, keeping them tight, preventing the through balls, and making sure you don't lose guys. Because you lose a guy in between one of your lines, or you lose a guy in between a center back and a wing back, that's how you can have one of these dangerous through balls hit. There's a lot of successes that Seattle's found this year, but it's mostly been due to an effective counter press. So they haven't been able to generate that quality from their possession. Where they have been able to find their goals is the counter press, quickly being able to convert turnovers into goals. This is where St. Louis is going to have to be careful and really take care of the ball, because Seattle isn't a team that translates the possession directly into quality chances. They translate the counterattack, but they don't hit the counterattack very often because the other team just doesn't have the ball. They take advantage of these few opportunities, and that's where this game is going to come in. It's these moments where St. Louis has the ball, St. Louis turns the ball over, and Seattle can take advantage of that. I look for St. Louis to be pretty effective in their set defense, but I look for St. Louis to be, I'm going to be cautiously optimistic that St. Louis learned from LAFC at the end of last game, and they're going to be able to handle some like a counterattack. They're going to know how to handle themselves in certain moments and not get too outside of themselves, bringing every player into the attacking half and get too forward. Stu, talk to me a little bit about Danny Musovski. Talk to me about Albert Rusnak. These are kind of some of the players that we really have to watch for in the attack, and they may be the difference makers for Seattle in addition to Pedro de la Vega.
Well, Musovski's an interesting guy. He's kind of got that journeyman cred. I believe he's originally from UNLV, and he came into the league. He was from the San Jose Earthquakes Academy system. I think played with Reno and USL before moving to the LAFC system. And then in 2024, he signed with Seattle Sounders for 2 or 3 year contract. And his reputation in the league is, I wouldn't say a most sterling one as a guy to produce. So he scored in 3 straight matches, and he seems to have finally clicked. And you don't want to face a player that's red hot, and he seems to be in the form of his career at the moment. So we'll see how he does there. And he's basically relegated Ferreira to the bench if, again, Ferreira was fully healthy. So he'll definitely be one to watch and how he interacts with our back line. And Albert Rusnak, I mean, I'm trying to remember if he started or came off the bench against us last time, but he's, what was he, 0.4 assists per 90 last year, something like that.
Yeah.
Very dangerous player. So he'll be one to keep an eye on. Rothrock, we'll get to it later, but he's probably going to play wing back on the left side. He'll be another one to watch. Maybe they move him up on the left side when they sub in later on in the match. Seattle is an interesting club. Their X points, looking at where they would be expected to be if everything went their way, they would be, I believe, second in the West with 18 points. So they've been a bit unlucky. So hopefully they stay unlucky. We'll see.
It's kind of all you can hope for. And on the Jesus Ferreira front, I mean, I know he's probably not going to play, but it's been interesting to see Danny Musovski kind of usurp him. And I make the correlation on one level to like a Simon Betcher usurping a Klaus, where the tag doesn't matter, the DP value doesn't matter. It's how you're performing. And Musovski's outperformed Jesus Ferreira when it comes to goal scoring, and that's where Seattle has struggled with. I mentioned they've struggled in finishing. They haven't struggled in creating shots. So Jesus Ferreira, while he hasn't been the goal scorer, having almost 0.5 assists per 90 is crazy from a guy that you expect to be your finisher. And if this doesn't sound like Klaus, then I might have to reiterate these numbers, because he's doing everything he needs to do to help produce goals other than being the one who scores the goals. But Danny Musovski coming in here with his main strength, I'm told from our friends over at Sounder at Heart and Jeremiah Oshen, is his ability to put himself into dangerous positions. He's not called a clinical finisher, but he's been generating about 1.3 XG per 90. which, I mean, if you're going to generate 1.3 XG per 90, you can afford to miss a few of those chances. Like those are the high quality volume chances that you want your number 9 to be producing. And it's coming from Danny Musovski. In games where both Jordan Morris and Danny Musovski have started, Seattle is 2 wins and 1 draw. In games where only Danny Musovski plays, 1 win, 2 losses, 2 draws. So it seems like you still need that quality around Musovski. You need that, maybe that other player to draw attention. And that could be where Pedro de la Vega comes in, because he's now healthy. He should be starting. I think he started the last time we played, but he's that kind of sorry, I take that back. He didn't play last time we played, but Pedro de la Vega is that X factor that could not replace Jordan Morris, but at least creatively and with the quality touch, he could be a factor that really enhances what Danny Musovski can do up front and draws attention away from Musovski that lets him do what he needs to closer to goal. That's kind of where I worry about that. On the other Seattle fronts, the set pieces, I mentioned that they haven't been strong in producing and finishing their set pieces. Seattle is one of 10 teams who have yet to score a goal from a dead ball, despite generating the second most shots from set pieces. So they create these chances. They draw fouls, whether it's a corner that I mentioned earlier or set pieces in general on the field. They create these. They just have yet to even find net for a single set piece shot. It's low quality that ranks 14th in expected goals from set pieces, despite this high volume. So when I think of what St. Louis needs to do on here, it's almost you can allow them these shots, these options at set pieces, but just play within yourself on defense, and you're historically speaking, you're going to limit what Seattle can actually do in those moments. From the St. Louis side, Stu, St. Louis, I think we're going to continue to see a 3-man back line to start. There's really no reason why we wouldn't expect that at this point, I think, from St. Louis, from Olaf to start a game. We can probably expect another low possession game. Like I said, 5 out of 10 games so far this season, we have less than 40% possession. It seems like forever since we've had a 45, 50+% possession game. But going against Seattle, I don't see any reason why that's going to change. But it's not really necessarily, to me, the issue in us possessing the ball. It's the inability to control possession in meaningful ways. So think about the goal that we scored, the Cedric Toyshirt goal against LAFC. That was controlling possession in a meaningful way and playing kind of what I expect St. Louis to try to do with the ball in possession. They're going to try to work it around their back line. They're going to try and open up space in draw teams to press them and then try to beat the press by opening up space in the midfield. But when they get the ball in those areas, they're still going to try to go direct to goal. So, I mean, who do you see in our attack that is, at least right now, maybe in current form, best suited to be doing this? Because, I mean, you could talk all you want, and please do, about the back line and who's doing a good job creating this and drawing pressure. But, I mean, who seems best suited and in best form to play the kind of offense St. Louis needs to against Seattle?
Well, I'm going to be really curious to see how Twickert attacks a guy like Yamar, who is a excellent center back for Seattle, but he is mistake prone. If he could be pressured into creating a turnover or mistake in their back third, be really interesting to see if we can capitalize on something like that. And that might be a benefit of, say, Simon Betcher coming on in the second half when he brings a little more of fresh legs to the attack. So that's specifically the battle I'm going to be interested in there. And also how Seattle uses Rothrock, who I think is a fascinating player. And I know I talked about him last time we played, but down that right side, last time him and Totland had a great battle, and how he's going to fare against what we assume is going to be Kyle Hebert at right wing back.
Do you think a guy like Paul Rothrock is one of their most dangerous players? That, I mean, we haven't talked much about him yet, but in addition to, I mean, he creates the width for Seattle, and I think that's one of the biggest things that this 3-4-3 or 3-4-2-1 will do for Seattle is create width with the quality that we talked about.
Well, they have so much talent. I mean, guys on paper with so much talent, like Rusnak, De La Vega, Musovski is kind of the guy that we've hinted at as a little bit of the butt of the joke, but he's the one who's scoring. Rothrock, and they have De Rosario, who's with Tacoma Defiance and is lighting up MLS Next Pro right now. So he might get called up on a short-term loan and feature in this match. Kind of maybe build some confidence on his sake before they Tacoma Defiance play Portland Timbers in the U.S. Open Cup next week. So it's just tough. Seattle is a great great coach team with a lot of talent. So they're always, just like LAFC, one of those teams that you expect to be a very difficult match.
And of those individual talented players, I mean, you're seeing a lot of really high rated players, even this year, guys who you expect: Christian Roldan, Obed Vargas, Yamar. These are players, whether you look at FOTMob or FBref, these are highly rated players. But they're not doing it in goal scoring. Like Christian Roldan, Daniel Guevara in our chat. Is Roldan having a down year so far this year? I assume you're talking about Christian. Not really. I mean, goal scoring wise, he's not a goal scorer by trade. Over the past couple of years, he's had, I think, 2 or 3 goals per season, 2 in 24, 3 in 23. And then he had 5 and 7 the years prior, but he already has 1 goal this year. So he's kind of on pace. It's just the guys who need to finish aren't finishing as much. But they're creating enough chances to where they're getting these expected points, these expected goal numbers to be higher. St. Louis does this kind of plays into the strength for St. Louis, though, because we allow a lot of chances. We allow a lot of shots, but we're good at limiting the high quality chances. We're one of the better teams in the league at limiting XG per shot to be these really low numbers. And if St. Louis can continue to do that, continue to make it to where Paul Rothrock or maybe even Alex Roldan on the other side are taking these long perspective shots, and you limit what Danny Musovski or where Danny Musovski can get near goal, and really, I don't want to say drop down to a low block or a deeper line, but if you can limit the space in the box, that really takes away a lot of the pressure that De La Vega and Danny Musovski in particular are going to be offering. The question to me, Stu, as we're running low on time here, but the question to me is, how are we going to handle St. Louis City? How are we going to handle our midfield? There's a lot that, because I mentioned through balls, I mentioned the short passes, the way that they like to progress. That puts your midfield under pressure. When you're relying on the space to be limited between your midfield line and your back line, you're looking at needing to have these high quality players to step in, intercept the ball, clear the ball, prevent it from really reaching that 18-yard box. And that's where your central midfield comes into play. So regardless of whether you think the formation is going to be a 5-4-1 in defense or a 4-4-2, at any point in the game, the focus to me on this game may be most apparent in the central midfield because of the depth that we don't have. No Leuven, no Durkin, no Morales. You're talking about, to me, Marcel Hartl obviously is a center midfielder in this game to me. I've got him almost penned in there. But who is alongside of him? And to me, the only option is Akil Watts. And so what does that do? Will it make our number 6 position a little bit weaker inherently? Because you're probably going to ask Watts to maybe go the distance, unless you're saying a Hartl-Ostrak combination is something you really want to see. And we haven't seen that yet. So of the positions along the field, would you say that central midfield spot is one of the biggest things that St. Louis is concerned about? Or is it that right wing back spot even more so with Kyle Hebert against like a Paul Rothrock and against maybe even Danny Musovski?
Well, with the right wing back, we at least know we can trust Hebert. So I don't think that's quite the area of concern much as the center midfield. Hebert is, I don't think he's best suited at right wing back as far as all the positions he can play. However, he can perform there, and he's, kind of like a replacement level player in, baseball or whatever. He can hold down the fort on your right wing back position. I think Watts is the obvious center midfielder to go with. The only question I have as to why he maybe would not fill in that role is if he comes off the bench for some reason, if Olaf doesn't think that, Hebert could have an injury, or say otherwise, if you're not going to play Zielinski and he's not an option, then your only right wing back really, if Hebert goes down, would be to put in Yarrow potentially, or I guess you could slot over Walm.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Watts starts. Watts and Hartl are your center midfielders for this match.
I mean, let's talk options here, because, I've got a handful of other questions that I think we've kind of gotten to, like the fact that can City successfully draw Seattle into a higher press, work through that. I talked about how we scored the goal against LAFC earlier being something to replicate. Is St. Louis going to continue to absorb pressure, hit on the counter? I think they will. and can City take good enough care to not turn the ball over in those dangerous areas? We've touched on these, so I want to talk about the lineups. I want to talk about options that we have before we get to our starting 11, because you bring up an interesting point with Keel Watts at central midfield. If you have a Watts Hartle central midfield and you need to do anything separate from that, I think Conrad Wallum is kind of a linchpin to this whole operation because of his versatility. You can move Wallum from left wing back to right mid or right wing back, and it really opens up a little bit more of what you can do. Because if you move Wallum over to the right side, you can also slide in Giannis Horn at left wing back. He's kind of your only other like legit left wing back option until you get to Mekhi Joyner. Couple options on the left side as opposed to the right, besides Kyle Hebert and Akil Watts, who we just talked about. You're probably going to need him at the midfield. But with Conrad Wallum, it opens things up. I would personally prefer to see Giannis Horn at left center back. He has told me that's his favorite position, his best position. I think we've seen it on the field that he's the best quality there, and he could play the left back in a 4-man back line. So do you expect us to start off in a 3 center back look? And what are maybe some more options, even in the attack, if we've got Marcel Hartle in the central midfield? Is it a foregone conclusion in the attack, I guess, that it's going to be Salio, Klaus, Teuscher, or do you see room for Betcher? Do you see Salio starting after his performance at the end of last game?
I think we're going to see Klaus, Teuscher, and Celio as our attacking options. I think Betcher's going to, as you alluded to, he's going to come off the bench, and I think he's going to start in the U.S. Open Cup. Do we see Emil start? Or not start, but sit on the bench? Does he get an emergency call for this match with a thin bench? That would be an interesting one. Also, Miggy Perez. I mean, with a thin midfield, where's Perez been? Obviously not throwing him into the mix after not featuring, but this does seem like the type of match that you want your homegrowns to step up or have some extra depth there. Do we want to get into lineups right now, or Seattle's lineup and then our own lineups?
Yeah. Why don't you run through that real quick?
Okay, I'm going to run through mine, and this is a lineup that I think that is a potential. So I have Lund, Horn, Baumgartel, and since Nielsen played 20 minutes and I'm not 100% sure if he's fully fit to go 90, I have Yarrow to round off the back three. Wallum, Hartle, Watts, Hebert, Celio, Klaus, and Teuscher.
I think we've got a pretty similar 11. Ben Lunton net for me, Giannis Horn, Timo Baumgartel, and I put Joachim Nilsson at right center back. And I may lose that battle purposefully this weekend when we put our lineups out, our consensus lineup out, because Yarrow is the obvious choice there. Definitely agree with you there. I'm just trying to fit Joachim Nilsson's quality into that back line. And I've got Giannis Horn so cemented as my left center back. I've got Timo Baumgartel based on his past few games performances in lieu of Henry Kessler. I like him at that central center back. And so it's the only spot available. I just don't know if Olaf rates him as a right center back as much as he does a left. But the rest, I think, we're in alignment with. Conrad Wallum on the left wing back, Marcel Hartle, Akil Watts, central mid, Kyle Hebert, the right wing back, and then Salio, Klaus, Teuscher up top. One name that we haven't talked about is Jean de Silva. And I think it's pronounced Jand. That's what the club tells me. It's Jand, not Jande or Zande. So I'm going to say Jand. What do you think about Jean Silva? And does he offer you something that we haven't talked about yet, which is 1v1 capability, speed down the right side, because he did play in brief training moments this week on the right side. Are you excited to see him? And do you think he offers that another gear maybe in the second half if you take out Salio?
Oh yeah, very excited about what he can bring. And I think, he's a bench option. I don't think he starts. I think he also likewise starts in the Open Cup as an option. Maybe Joyner, Betcher, and Jande. But yeah, no, he was our final signing of the window before it closed. I know people were disappointed not to see him against LAFC, but he got a little extra time, and we have plenty of matches in the season. So I think this is the first time we see him away, and then at the Open Cup, we'll see him at home.
And Olaf said on Thursday of Jean Silva, funny guy, important for the locker room, a good player, but he hasn't had too many training sessions yet. This was his first full week of training. He still has all of his stuff in Atlanta. He's talked to us this week and really said that it came on quick the last 24 hours before the trades when he found out about it. So he was still kind of gathering his bearings when he joined the team at the end of last week. I do think he offers an opportunity to be featured this week. Stu, we're running up on time, so let's hit our score predictions.
We scored a lot last week, so I'm going to rein it back a little bit, and I'll say let's go with a 1-1 draw away to Seattle.
I've got a 2-2 draw. I'm still not ready to predict a win, especially on the road against a team that had 4 straight results against us before this year. So it's a tough opponent, obviously, in Seattle all the time. This could be Ben Lunt's last opportunity in MLS match to feature as a starting goalkeeper. So I'd have no doubt he's going to be amped up for this one. And other than that, we hope to see kind of what we saw against LAFC, a gritty team, a better offensive performance, and learning from those mistakes and how to close out a game, I think would be nice to see. That's it for us on Flyover Footy. Thank you so much for joining us on the Big 550 KTRS. My name is Matt Baker, joined by Stu Holkgren to preview the Seattle Sounders. Enjoy the game this weekend. Have a good time, and we will talk to you later. All right, Stu. Really lost track of time there for a minute, so I had to close this up quick.
Yeah. I was looking at the clock and wasn't sure.
I'm not as good as Phil. I had it on lockdown until we got to that last part, and then it just kind of woo. Oh well.
Yeah, that should be an interesting one. We'll see. Are you gonna add it? Oh, go ahead.
What's up? No, go ahead.
No, I'm just looking at some of the other things.
Sebastian stared in the chat saying there's a fun mic'd up video with him in Atlanta. Seems like he potentially has a personality to fit the fun outgoing character role that Indy left. Speaking of Jean de Silva, and I think I've heard from the folks down in Atlanta, Stripes and Spikes and Stripes. Shoot, forgot that, but they said basically the same thing. Funny personality in the locker room. The problem that they really heard that things soured when Atlanta wasn't doing well, and he still had the funny personality. So it's not that he didn't take things seriously necessarily, but it's like, he seemed to try and have a specific type of personality. And because Atlanta was going through coaching changes and their big priced players weren't performing, it was just a bad mix. And so I think this could be an opportunity as much as anything for a Silva refresh, which is great for St. Louis if it works out.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic opportunity for both him and the club. And it's nice that he's going to come into a team with, other Portuguese speakers.
Oh yeah. I can already see the fun he's having in training with Celio and with Klaus. And I think I'm excited to see what he can do when he gets more training, because they don't expect too much from him is the thing. Like, it's obvious from seeing it, because I feel like sometimes I put it out there that folks have returned to training or they're in training with the team, but when you begin training with the team, that's just that first of the last step, right? You have to get the full opportunity to train in all these hard and low intensity training sessions with the team. It's the first of that last step, but it's still the progression, as we're seeing with Alm and Reed. So I think we're going to see a lot from Silva at some point, but I just hope to see some of it this weekend, and it'll help give us more attacking options. So you mentioned Jaskalainen. I don't know if Jaskalainen doesn't feature, it's probably going to be because we can expect to see, if he doesn't get signed, rather, it's probably because we can expect to see a little bit of Silva at least be an option in the second half.
Yeah. What will it take to see Zielinski, and will we see him before the end of the year?
In MLS play?
Yeah.
Right now, I mean, I think it takes a Kyle Hebert injury.
Oh, that's not.
And I've said for a couple weeks now, Kyle Hebert is our backup right wing back. And I don't see any other argument to that because of just what we've seen on the field. You could say Akil Watts, and I wouldn't argue necessarily with that, but it's either Watts or Hebert. And in this game, you can't. I don't see another option at central midfield other than Akil Watts. So your depth in other places being hurt is now making your right back position even more treacherous. And so it's it's if Kyle Hebert's not on the field and Akil Watts can't play that position, then yeah, maybe Zielinski takes it over. But you could also just as easily say, oh, nope, I'm moving Conrad Wallum to the right, and I'm going to toss in Giannis Horn on left wing back, or even more so, instead of playing Joey Zielinski, you can just straight up change the formation back to a 4-man back line, and you have Josh Yarrow, Timo Baumgartel, Giannis Horn, and Joachim Nilsson, which is basically what we did at the end of last game. And that kind, or that, where Yarrow is that right back spot, or second center, the center back. Hebert was the right back at the end of last game, but Yarrow could easily slot over. He's played right back before in a 4-man back line. All of those options, I struggle to see that they aren't all ahead of playing Joey Zielinski at this point, just because we haven't seen him, and I don't have any reason to think that he's favored over any of those options. But the only question I just continue to have is, why did we sign him if we're so low on playing him? And I don't have an answer for that, because it does frustrate me.
Yeah, and can we not? Yeah, get him more time with City too, or it poor.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure no one's more disappointed than Joey Zielinski to not be playing, but I'm hopeful he's using this time training with first team to learn, and then he'll kind of adapt and maybe be an MLS player more regularly next year. We'll see.
yeah.
I mean, it's a long career. He's as a MLS Super Draft second round pick. You don't.
That's the thing. Expectations on where we picked him, right?
Yeah. And I mean,
yeah. Mark Stock on X, Conrad Wallum at CDM. Not to me. I do not want to see Conrad Wallum at CDM. I want to see him more in the attack. That's like saying Marcel Hartl, drop back as deep as possible and remove yourself from the attack. I want to see Conrad Wallum with the ball as much as possible, progressing as high as he can. I don't think we've seen enough of him in a traditional wingback spot just because of everything else we've needed to be doing. But Conrad Wallum, to me, progressing the ball with the ball at his feet is where he needs to be, whether it's a wingback or an attacking mid. I would rather Watts just sit back there and almost play that a newer type 6 where he's just sweeping around and helping to clean up things. That's just me, though. All right, Stu. Well, I think we're going to get out of here. Any other final thoughts for this one?
No, just excited about this weekend's match and really excited about the Open Cup next week. It'll be a good one. And, man, I want to win a trophy, and that's a great opportunity to win a trophy this year. So let's hope we go for it.
And we're going to be back to preview the U.S. Open Cup with Fallout on Sunday. Phil's going to join me for Fallout this weekend. Should be around 2:30 in the afternoon on Sunday to recap the Sounders game and to preview the Open Cup. So join us then. Until then, check us out on the socials at Flyover Footy, and where to find Stu and me. So we'll talk to you between now and then. And go City.
Go City.